Spiderhead is a unique prison that appears more like a fancy hotel. Inmates here enjoy a more relaxed life, including leisurely walks, social interactions, and opportunities to reduce their sentences and earn rewards. However, there's a catch: all these luxuries come at a cost. Spiderhead also serves as a testing ground for medical trials, and not all of them are gentle. To be fair, every participant here volunteers and has the right to decline and return to a standard cell in another prison. Now, picture Ray, one of the inmates, sitting in a chair facing a window. Steve kicks off the experiment by injecting a substance into Ray's veins. Just a minute later, they administer the initial dose of the drug and start sharing jokes. Ray can't control himself and bursts into uncontrollable laughter. Even when the jokes take a darker turn, Ray can't help but continue laughing. Mornings at Spiderhead follow a repetitive pattern. Inmates wake up to a blaring loudspeaker, and their names are announced for the day's experiment. Steve asks Jeff if he's willing to try the brand new N40 compound, something no one has dared before. Jeff, being himself, agrees without hesitation. They add another drug to supercharge his speech abilities. Now Jeff can describe even the tiniest details in great depth. After the experiment, Jeff meets Lizzie and attempts to share his experience. But here's the twist: that vocabulary-enhancing substance has a hiccup, and Jeff can only utter a few words. All he can recall is feeling an overwhelming sense of love and admiration for everything around him, whether it's flowers or factory pipes. As the sun sets, Jeff reclines in bed, reflecting on his prison journey. It all started with a wild party joyride where a tipsy Jeff decided to be the designated driver. Fast forward to the next day, and the N40 trials, now called Cupid, continue. This time, Jeff has a new partner, Heather. She's a quick-change artist, swiftly altering her emotions under the drug's influence. The conversation between Jeff and Heather lasts only briefly before they succumb to intimacy. They pay no heed to the cameras as the substance erases their mental barriers. They conclude by declaring their love for each other, much to Steve's delight. He instructs Mark to closely monitor them as the effects of the substance wear off. After that whirlwind experience, Jeff and Heather find themselves in an awkward situation. Jeff spends his free time with Lizzie, keeping mum about the experiments, and avoids Heather like the plague. However, the following day, Jeff is given a double dose of Cupid, and this time, he's faced with an older woman whom he finds repulsive when sober. But as soon as the substance enters his bloodstream, he falls deeply in love with her once again. After the experiment, Jeff doesn't feel comfortable working with Lizzie in the kitchen because she's his girlfriend. So, he asks Mark to move him somewhere else. Steve takes Jeff to the lab, but this time, Jeff is on the other side of the glass. Inside, Steve shows Jeff both of the girls he partnered with in previous experiments. The boss gives Jeff a choice: he can pick which girl will receive a substance that makes them scared and in pain. But Jeff can't choose. He cares about both girls and doesn't want to hurt either of them. In the end, they let the girls go, and the experiment stops. On another Friday, when Jeff goes for a walk, he tries to call his girlfriend, the one who was with him during the accident. But, once again, she doesn't pick up, and he gets her voicemail. In the evening, Jeff hangs out with Lizzie and plans a little surprise for her on Christmas. Later, when Jeff is back in the familiar lab chair, he sees Rogan in front of him, a tough-looking inmate with lots of tattoos. Jeff remembers the days with the girls and refuses to take part in the experiment. Nothing happens, and after a few minutes of silence, they both get released. Jeff realizes that he and Rogan were competing for the girl's attention, and she was supposed to choose one of them to get medicine. Jeff rushes into Steve's office and finds Heather there, confirming his suspicions. Surprisingly, the doctor doesn't argue with Jeff. Instead, he shows him a diagram that shows who's supposed to get close to whom when they're under the influence of the drug. When Jeff complains, Steve reminds him that being in Spiderhead is a privilege, and if he's unhappy, he can go to a regular prison without the chance of getting out early. Jeff gets the hint, and the next time he's with Rogan, he doesn't make a scene. Steve gives Mark a weekend off and decides to try the Cupid drug himself to understand what his subjects go through. They keep doing experiments, and Steve tells Jeff that they have to give the girls Darkenflox because a committee says they have to for the experiment to be pure. Jeff tries to explain that he doesn't want anyone to experience the effects of this substance, even if he doesn't have feelings for the girls. But Steve stands his ground, reminding Jeff of the special treatment he gets for cooperating. Not wanting to go back to a regular prison, Jeff reluctantly agrees to give Darkenflox to Heather. Heather gets scared and starts crying, but the people in charge calmly record everything, noticing that Jeff's comments don't have any romantic feelings. They achieve what they wanted in the experiment, and Steve plans to end it. However, something goes wrong, and Heather loses control. She finds something sharp and uses it to free herself from the torment caused by Darkenflox. While Steve and Mark deal with Heather, Jeff sees the supervisor's lost keys and discovers a notebook with plans for upcoming experiments and a lottery ticket with the same numbers as the names of the medicines. Jeff notices that Steve isn't in the room behind the glass, so he quickly secures a safe, hides the keys, and hopes Steve doesn't realize he's onto him. Steve tells Mark that if anyone spills the beans about what happened to Heather, he'll implicate everyone involved in the experiment. It's like having a recipe for a big disaster. Lizzie, who's new to the experiments, tries out a substance called Darkenflox for the first time. After the crazy experience, she meets Jeff in a secret spot and shares her thoughts and feelings. Lizzie admits she's not sure if Spiderhead is better than a super strict regular prison. In return, Jeff opens up about his own past, revealing that on the night of the accident, his girlfriend was also in the car and didn't survive. That's why he's willingly participating in these experiments, hoping to make up for his past mistakes. Their heart-to-heart talk leads to them spending the night together. Steve quickly figures out that they're close and decides to take advantage of their connection. When Jeff returns for the next experiment, he's given a choice: inject Darkenflox into Lizzie or leave Spiderhead. Jeff chooses neither, but Dr. Steve postpones the experiment until morning. When they meet again, Steve has Lizzie's confidential file. It turns out her crime was so shocking that even Darkenflox wouldn't make it worse. Steve seems pretty excited as he watches Jeff increase the dosage to the maximum level. However, it's clear that Jeff has plans of his own, and they don't involve Lizzie. Mark, who's realized he's also caught up in Steve's game with the inmates, decides it's time for a getaway plan. He hands Jeff the remote control and Jeff gets the scoop from Steve. He convinces Steve to open the main exit so he and Lizzie can escape. But Steve grabs the remote and gives Lizzie a hefty dose of Darkenflox, causing her intense pain. Then he smashes his phone to make sure no one can undo his evil scheme. The couple manages to shake off the effects of the drug and makes a run for it. At the same time, Steve announces over the loudspeaker that everyone is going back to regular prisons because of the escape. Jeff and Lizzie become the hottest targets on the "Catch Us If You Can" list. Dozens of tough criminals, led by the tattooed giant Rogan, form a welcoming committee for the couple who stripped them of all their prison perks. Steve makes a break for it because Mark has called the police boats, who are heading to Spiderhead. Steve pulls off a great escape, hopping into a small plane just before the cops show up. But here's the kicker: since his remote control is toast, the meds get pumped into his body big time. Cupid strikes again, and the guy thinks a tiny rocky island is a slice of heaven. Mark, on the police boat, watches as his ex-boss goes in circles above the water and then smacks into the rocks. Jeff and Lizzie get creative, hijacking a boat and sailing off to freedom before the police arrive. They're thrilled to be out of there but can't help wishing Steve had created a potion for self-forgiveness. And that's how the story wraps up.
Thank you for watching, and please subscribe Mango Recap for more video like this and help the channel grow.